privileged today to be able to welcome three good friends and longtime commentators, critics, people with deep insights into how organizations work and how they can make use of whatever technologies are available to them at the moment, for better or worse. Professor Scot Rousse is a visiting scholar at UC. He has a PhD from Northwestern. He's worked closely with Fernando Flores, with Hubert Dreyfus, who is a professor at Berkeley, in this arena of sort of human agency and machine intelligence and business organization. Chauncey Bell is a professor, based in Seattle. He's a longtime managing director in the consulting area, worked extensively on consulting to business organizations on their design and their culture and managing how they process commitments. We've known each other and worked together for many years. Senator Dr. Fernando Flores, based in Santiago and Palo Alto, is the original sponsor and organizer of the CyberSign project in Chile with Stafford Beer back in the 1970s. He was Minister of Finance in the Chilean government under the Allende regime from 1970 to 73. He then spent 4 years in prison and then came to the United States to take a PhD under John Searle and Burton Dreyfus. He spent a lifetime helping major organizations around the world to change their practices and focus on managing commitments and building trust. He's consulted on organizational design for many of the world's most successful companies, ABB, Cemex, TransAlta, IBM, Lotus, just a handful. He's the author of many books on the subject of business strategy, systems, culture, and I would say he's probably one of the most important people we can know in this generation. So without any further ado, let me turn this over to Chauncey. Do you want to just take the lead in terms of how we proceed with this conversation? And then, or do you want to have Fernando lead off? We're not hearing you.
Yeah, let me turn on my audio.
Okay.
I would prefer that you take the lead in this. You've done an introduction, but now we the three of us have not been present in most of the conversation that's been going on. I can say a couple of things that are potentially provocative, Jim, that'll help here. The thing that worries me personally as I'm watching what we're doing in the era that's sprung upon us now, that has the two letters AI as defining we're not sure what yet, because we haven't seen what it's going to do. The thing that worries me most is that we don't enter this era with a good understanding of what human beings are. I don't know if somebody's not muted and a voice is coming in. That we don't have a good general understanding of what human beings are. And when I work with clients doing things in the world, that's one of the beginning points of confusion. So I remember a long time ago, one of the moments when I appeared most widely in the internet was when I coined the phrase, the word compumorphizing, to describe something that a woman who called herself a neurological scientist, but was actually an anatomist of the brain, was describing how we think and what goes on in the world. And what she was doing was applying what we understand about computers to understanding what human beings do. And that is one of the things that's very common today. So anyway, Jim, one of the questions I have is, what's the understanding that we have about what a human being is and what characterizes us as we are beginning into this conversation? And our general understanding is not very good there, I think.
Thank you, Chauncey. I think I'll step back. For the last 3 days, we've been hearing a variety of presentations about the future of AI and its impact on humanity. And just for your background, there's sort of two camps that are emerging here. There's one camp that says we're on the verge of an AI revolution. This is the equivalent of the fire, the wheel. This is going to be, sort of change the very nature of our being. There's all these growth opportunities. It's going to transform the human condition for good. Basically, I would say it's kind of sounds a little bit religious. It's typical of having spent a lot of time in the software industry. It's kind of typical first generation hype for stuff that we don't really know what the ROI on it will do. It's kind of the early stages, but we're going to be talking positively about all the positive effects of it. And the technology, revolution is going to be, the future's so bright, you got to wear shades. That's the kind of thing. On the other hand, we're seeing a lot of skepticism, including our last panelist here. That's kind of the side that, I'm sensing that this panel will come down on. My own focus has been on the concentration of wealth effects, that the empowerment that this is given to a handful of companies in the world economy. First of all, with respect to the global South, they're practically left out of the AI revolution. Secondly, there was a 17th century enclosure movement in which most of the peasants were exploited here and expropriated. And in this context, that amounts to the sort of free ride that the technology companies got on the entire corpus of human wisdom and Wikipedia and everything on the internet that they were able to mine for free. There's now lawsuits that are catching up with that. But basically, you have an enormous industry now representing 28% of the value of the entire publicly traded U.S. economy. 7 companies, not owned by everybody. On the other hand, we're hearing from the labor economists that there will be massive dislocation, that you're going to be strikingly improving the labor productivity, less demand for jobs of many kinds. At the very least, a massive relocation of skills. And, at a time when it's not like we're not facing other crises that we have to deal with, climate change, the nuclear arms race. And so on top of all that, we have the negative uses we've seen of AI and surveillance in targeting people and in overmanaging labor. All kinds of those risks, even before we get to the next generation of AI. So I want to turn this over to Fernando Flores, my friend, a longtime source of wisdom in this area, and just get your perspective on what all this means and how we can balance these two perspectives, the skepticism and the true believers.
You're muted, Fernando. You're muted.
Now you can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I thank you, Jim, for what you said, and I recall today that I had to speak here. I think I was invited to be present, listening. Then I struggled to read your note and also we see a panel that I worked with him for 15 years and Chauncey for 20. Whole panel could be here. We know each other enough. Then what I want to do is something that can be useful to everyone. I want to tell the certain part of the story of my life, how I was changing my interpretation, and every interpretation produced different engagement, and also how I survived the prison. Let us start by Chile. I was 22 years old. I had the idea to get married when I was 19. Then I finished with 22. And when we are middle class, I tried to find a job, and then we begin to accumulate costs called children. I have three of my son and daughters were born before I finished my degree undergraduate. The only thing that's in Chile is 6 years, not 4 years like here. But one day appeared in newspaper an announcement in Chile, and they said that they are looking for operation research guy. Some of you know, many people here by the age, I believe, that don't know that operation research in some moment was like AI, doing mathematical modeling for industrial process and economical process. They use the linear programming of dancing, for which I worked when I was at Stanford a little bit. Then, and because I was a good student of that, in my last year, this newspaper announcement, I applied. It's a long story, but I applied. My boss told me that I should do it because we need to know who are these people that can be competitors of the machine. And I went to the story, and I win the offer. It was a good offer. They paid me 5 times more money that I was doing. And my oldest son was with polio and IT. The only problem I was in the last year of school. And then I begin to realize that life, I want to say there, cannot be, you can work in modeling, but your own life is a moment of that, what I call contingent phenomenon. Why that happened, and doing that happened something else. And what happened something else, I'm going to jump, is that I discovered a guy, Stafford Beer, exists. I don't know, some of you know that name. Stafford Beer was a great leader of modeling and cybernetics in the 60s, 70s, and he died. Then, but I don't have any access to that. And but I discovered there was something else, and I want to say something that the secret of good organization was the circulation of communication. Now in cybernetics, they don't distinguish beginning communication and information. But that's what this. I was fascinated. The book, some of you can see, still you can learn something using from them. It's called cybernetic and management. Then, but unexpected, and I want to jump many parts of my life here. I entered to be a vice provost with 26 years old of the Catholic University of Chile that was having a movement of reform. And I want to jump in, but it was something important there. I learned in my own practice that the essence of good organization is conversations. That all my mathematical modeling, including the circulation information, was not there, and also was politically. And some of the faculty were very right-oriented. For example, the economical department, most of them were Chicago boys. And they were very important many years after in the history of Chile. They were the people that Pinochet used for the economy. Some of them, one of them were a friend of mine, but I was in the other side. And then came the election of Allende, and I was offered, or asked for my party to take the third position in the bigger organization for economic development called Corfo. And very soon I discovered that everyone was very happy, but there was the part of the job of the government initially was nationalized 120 enterprise. And I discovered that I was the only engineer in this top organization, in the first board. And this organization had a mission to organize all of that. and I realized that most of my colleagues were not thinking that; they were thinking only political. Then I began to do it. In some moment, I had the idea to write a letter. I didn't write well English. I asked for help to this big guy called Stafford B that I know that exists. He had like a book called Decision and Control. And one of my friends that was professor at MIT told me, you need to read that book. And he said, well, I read the other book. Well, the point is that I read the letter, and Stafford B told me, if you come to Boston, London, please see me. And he invited me. I went there. There's a lot of anecdotes here, how I get the money to arrive there. Then I found very interesting again him, and I said, can you find some guys that can help us in Chile? Because we have this problem, and no one is thinking this, and I know the phenomenon is not decision making. The phenomenon is communication, and your thinking is very good, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, yeah, I know one guy. Who? Me. I said, we can afford you. He said, doesn't matter. And I jammed the story. And for 2 years, up to the moment of the coup, he and me work in this. And we produce this phenomenon called the cyber scene. And then I'm going to jump because I want to be useful for you guys. Every time I do that, I move out of information. Stafford teach me one thing. The teaching that he teach me is time is fundamental. And action is fundamental. Most of data is obsolete, he said, very soon. Yeah, mention of the newspaper, get obsolete in the man of the day. Now it's different because with this story, you spend the same time with the news of the day, with the video of whatever other time. And it was very useful for me to do that. And I will never be the Minister of Finance Economic if I were not having that. I get the reputation that I was the guy that know how to make things happen. And I know the time here to do that. Then I went to Jan there. I was in the palace of the president of Chile. I was in this moment the Minister of Government, the Minister of Secretary Advisor of the President. But before I had been Minister of Finance and Economic, all that in 9 months, you can imagine the crisis and all of that. And I went to the palace, and I was under the bomb, but I saved my life. And I don't want to enter in that part because I don't believe it's relevant for this conversation. Then some people were killed, and I was sent to something called, we are analyzing you. And at the end, they had analyzed me for 3 years. And one day, the dean of law school of Stanford came to there in a Republican government, and then he said, "We are interested that you go to work in Stanford, and we offer a job in the computer science department." You can imagine what is that. I couldn't not so ignorant to know that the computers are going to be something new. They were only mainframe in Chile when we were working in this modeling. And I want to be in California with my 5 kids. That's the real truth. And I have a job for a minimal amount of money. And there I did it. And I have a surprise that all these guys that were in the department of Stanford were fantastic mathematicians, great professor of database, but they don't want to talk with a guy like me. They say, thank you, being here, but we wouldn't have shared background. And that's very important for thinking communication. What shared background is. And my opinion, the computer is trying to get a lot of data to get shared background, but shared background could be shared noise too. Anyway, then but there was an exception. There was one guy in Stanford that was the new leader of AI that we are bringing. Want to begin to be friends. He was married with a person that now is a doctor, physician, eight people. And we begin to talk, and then he showed me something, and I said to him in summer, all these things that you are trying to do in linguistic models of that time, not the linguistic model of 9, I found that they are missing something, and they are missing understanding, and they are missing biology. And I don't want to, and you, in the question you can ask me why I said that to him. And Terry was enormous general, and he listened, and together we tried to write a paper. And I had never written a paper in my life. I cannot do it without a guy like him. But in the paper, we say 3 things that I believe still are valid. Number one, language need to be looking from a very different point of view. And we pick up 3 points of view that were 3 traditions that were different. I'm going to start first with the tradition of Heidegger. That was the one that was less competent in that time because I don't have my PhD yet. I had not initiated that. But I begin to say, what is Heidegger really think is important? It's not to see in data, it's in possibilities. Not looking also at her perception of the present, like knowledge. And then fantasy begin to be important. My opinion, Trump is a fantasy. And the fantasy have been begin to real and contagious many people. And other in politics is a lot about fiction possibility. That's that. But they can take the heart and they can produce the bad thing that they can produce. Sometimes they can produce the very good things. I have a great admirer in the history of the United States for people like Lincoln and Roosevelt. That you can learn a lot about human there. And well, that's one part. And the other part that I bring from my time in prison. The other, I bring a certain biological knowledge that could be interesting for you. When Villar came to Chile, he said me, there is a Chilean guy called Humberto Maturana. That do you know him? No, I don't know him, but I know who he is. He's a professor of biology in the Academy of Science in Chile. And the guy did a famous paper in MIT when he was doing work there. When we were very young, it's a paper called what the eyes told to the brain of the frog. That's the story. And that's what intrigued me always, the question. Do I know? He said to me, he had told to me, this guy is very important. I have been in a meeting with him. Can we invite him? Yes, I can invite you to leave. That was in 1971, I believe. And I appeared there. And appeared this guy, small, with a beard, that in my one of the more deep biology that I have studied, and I have studied a lot of biology. That, in my opinion, very important for the question of intelligence and communication and all of that. And this guy arrived there, we have a meeting, and bring another Chilean guy with him that was his student just coming back from Harvard, in which he had get a PhD with 21-year-old. That was 71. And they said, look, we talked there and listen to the conversation, and they bring a manuscript of the book. They said, we have been trying to produce this book in English, it has not been accepted. Can you write the preface and to be here, and I can do. And that happened, but I didn't have time to read books when I was doing the job. I was reading the Cyber Steam project, but I was reading all this bigger economical mess that I had to read. But I saw the preface that B.R. wrote a month after, and he said, if all you said is true, that it looked to me that could be true, that's all he said. It can change everything. And everything means everything, including my interpretation of cybernetics, he said. And they said he invented a book in which they invented a new concept called the autopoiesis. And the basic idea that any living being is a consequence of circulation of molecular interactions with the medium, and the medium and the content are absolutely interconnected. It's something that I begin to deal with more after. And therefore, perception is no perception object. Every perception has to do with the way that the medium and then interact. And the nervous system capture relevant, not capture something that has to do with it. I have been told me many years to understand that thing well, but I begin to understand. I said, now I see the connection. I said many years later between hermeneutic of Heidegger and biology. Then the notion of interpretation began to be important, but one more that came later, when I was already in Stanford, is the notion of the interpretation and how this phenomenon can be connected with something that I had discovered at the end of my prison, but really being here, because I believe that was a very important English philosopher that have been talking about that, but finally realized that the English philosopher was American and was professor in Berkeley. And one day, we know that invited me to meet with Dreyfus and Serle and other students of PhD students of both universities to talk about AI, the AI of that time, talking not this AI. I was the only guy that was not a PhD student because I was only a research associate in Stanford, and I don't know how to get from there. But in the process of this, I discovered Searle. And Searle, after 2 meetings, said to me, you could be a good graduate student, part of the conversation. And I said, why not? I need to find a job here, a permanent. My job is not there, and I have 5 kids, all of that. I am trying to build this personal thing out, because you need to understand that human beings are not concerned with data. They are concerned with concern. And my concern and the local circumstance define a lot my next step of theories. And I believe the good news is that I have this contingency that in the middle of the decades, in which everything began to get together, and I did a PhD with Searle and Dreyfus in 2 years. And at the same time, Terry and me wrote this book, Understanding Computer and Cognition. And this is the first time I believe that hermeneutic, speech act, and the biology trying to be together, not like explanation or great theory, but I said, look, we need to consider these 3 things. And I invented a product there that is called the coordinator that make not much money. I met Chauncey in that process of doing that, and Chauncey was the great practical designer of the product that needed to be there. And we did a couple of very good work. And at the end, I developed certain economical independence for me, and decided to come back to be a senator in Chile, because I want to be president of Chile, but it didn't work. I was elected senator. Then now I want to say, I finished all that. How I think what happened now about, I didn't hear the speeches of all of the people I get at the end when you were talking, Jim. But I think that Terry and me have been working on something now, and the word intelligence needs to be analyzed philosophically, because it's still a Cartesian notion. It's still fixing the idea that you are careful and have good observation and have recurrent experiments that are going to be the central thing. And that's why they need data and data. And I believe that there is another kind of phenomenon that I call care. And machines don't have care. That's what the professor from Chicago, a student of Bell, said, computer don't give a damn. That's the AI don't give a damn. And that is important. But what does that mean here? Care, sensibilities. And that's what we attribute to humanity. No? Humanity have care, have illuminate care. Care could be positive and negative. The care of a fascist is different from the care of a Democrat, or the care of a care also implies certain sense of belongingness. That, in my opinion, is in the center of evolution. We were not the kind of ape that were transformed in the process of evolution that happened with Homo erectus, apparently. They don't begin to care about their baby the way that we care today, because we're not born. Other species, they are ready in one day, they get prepared. And then, if we want to philosophical thinking this, I believe we should start not only model of volume and what is happening to human beings. And also, I believe that this thing could be very useful for doing that. I see positive things from this technology too. I believe that we can think about education, some of them. But I think that the principal problem of the world today is survival of the political crisis that is coming, and in the world and here. That's all, Jim. I don't know if this is useful and it's out of context for this conference, but you asked me to be here, that's why I did.
No, that's a helpful perspective. I guess if you could say a little bit more about the critique of old-fashioned AI and that you developed with Dreyfus, and the importance of managing commitments, that whole approach, and how that relates to our current AI generation.
I believe that I like to always give examples because I learned from being engaged in life. I want to tell one example that connected this and make Chauncey can interact with that too. It's a day many years ago when we have written the book already, Computer and Cognition, the whole thing. Some people from Mexico came to see to my office in Berkeley at that time, and said, we have here that you are expert in service. And we have a business. We sell cement in cement or cement. I don't want to maybe mistake your pronunciation.
Cement, yeah.
And we have a problem because in cement, traditional, you put cement in sack, in car, you move them in big ships too, and they treat there. But we have other business that are growing 25% a year in Mexico. They were in some moment begin to be the third largest cement company in the world. And in the year that it was 93, something like 94, we said we have the principal story begin to be ready mix. And ready mix is a service business. And you tell me why you are a service business, because I don't know nothing about service like that. And you say, well, because the thing we need to put the blend in a truck, and the truck need to have 2 hours to leave, not need to be thrown away. And we have problems, and they are complaining of the client that we are going to arrive on time, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, I don't know, I am not expert in service, I am expert in language. I said, but I am willing to go there, and you show me one day what you do, maybe I can say something, and you need to pay me to go pray, and I will take one person on my team with me, that's all. And we charged like maybe $30,000 for doing that time. And after one day, I discovered the story. I said, look, I don't know what you have. The problem is you have a culture that don't have commitments. And when you receive a request for cement, for ready mix is different. That sucks, because if the cement don't arrive in 2 hours, they cannot be used. Then it's a loss for you. You need to go take the car and begin to throw away the thing. You lost the content, and you lose the story, and people get angry. And we quite get angry because we are not talking about one truck. Sometimes you need 10 trucks on the way or 2 hours. They were doing the metro of the city. And vice versa. Your client get very unhappy with you when you don't arrive on time and this happens. But sometimes you get very angry because your truck arrived there, but they are not ready to receive. And because they're not ready to receive, there. And you listen well what I'm saying. I am putting the conversation in the center, not the truck, not the knowledge. And your culture, very interesting, is that you don't make promises. I had never thought that. I'm going to get, this is the first thing that we need to change the conversation of AI. In the organization, the conversation is the organization at the end. You need to form it by humans that make commitments like speech act, promises, declaration, and other things. And then let me finish the story with the guy. I said, okay, you have a secret, but with the money that you pay me, you cannot solve the problem. You need us to transform the culture of your company. Yeah, how that happened? Within minimum 6 months. And what we are going to do there, we are going to do a more workshop to define what the promise is. The promise, the meaning of the promise, not in the word promise. The meaning of the promise is in the relation between the two people, in the temporality of the story. And then your people can use the word promise, but mean nothing, mean a place for excuse and other story. Then, how you change culture? Well, that's my secret. My secret is that it's a biological transformation of bodies. And I will take a certain time to do it. And I need to put young engineers here that have been trained by Anne. Most of them were Chilean in that case. And they will work with your people, they will be friends, they will be going to take tequila with them and having cabritos and all that. And in the process of doing that, the sound transformation begin to happen. And I want to only tell the anecdote. There was one particular guy that looked like he was coming from a mafia book. And he said, this thing that you are taking, you don't want to work here. This is for gringos, not for us. And we were Chilean, we were gringos for them, okay? Then my guy that now is a big executive in Chile, and there was a 24, 25-year-old, and the break, I was watching the whole thing. She said to me, this guy is terrible, I don't know what to do. I said, don't worry. The fact that he's complaining and offending you, I interpret like trust. He's not afraid to something that is useful story. That confirmed my idea that you need to change the culture. Then wait there, and we work there. Then this guy that was terribly around a month or 2 months of the process, he said, now, you know what problem that I have with all this nice thing you are doing is that my mouth only produces lies. What lies? Lie is making an act of language, could be an assertion, could be an assessment, and whatever, that I don't want to enter into detail here. This, but it's a habit that we have. And it's a habit that I cannot do because I know that the track are not going to be ready. Then I need to say yes, because we are selling, or vice versa. Then they normally they spend 5 minutes talking about soccer between the guy there. And the guy that is dispatching the ready-made and the guy receiving the ready-made are the same culture. And not the engineer that signed the agreements. They sign agreement for millions of tons and for 2 years of work. They were two cultures totally separate and not talking. I believe then the third, the 4th month, he said, I begin to like there because I can bring that there's a connection between my life and my family, because Jose was lying there. He said, ah, yeah. And finally, we discovered the guy belonged to a religious Catholic community. There was not a guy from the mafia. We were not to be scared from him. He was simply a Mexican guy. That was our prejudice. And that's at the end produced a contract that was totally like $24 million in that year in which I worked with this guy. The commitment is a central phenomenon to be in consideration. I don't see this guy discussing. Now you can sometimes make circuit of promises by request automatically. I buy a book to Amazon. I push button. I don't talk with anyone, but the moment I do, I have making the promise that the money is authorized to be taken from my other account, and they also are going to fulfill the promise, and I can do that. Yes, the circuit of commitment can be partially automatized, but at the end, it's a relation of entity that care, and the end care implies speech act and also implies institution. And I believe they begin to improve AI for that concern. I believe that some progress can be done. But if you look there, what is happening before AI, American culture is about to enter in potential dictatorship, because the discourse is not about promise of any kind. It's also about invalidate the other people, accuse that they don't fulfill, and creating a fascist culture of conversation that already we know what happened in Europe. Then this is my idea about the scenery to be there. There's other phenomenon that I talk more that you should ask me if I want, is that we talk about possibilities, and there, but I will prefer that part done by some of my colleagues. I believe that B could be doing a good work. She's a good work with me and know Heidegger better than me. Okay.
Well, I think it's a very helpful perspective that you offer. We are on the cusp of a very frightening election in this country, and I think having been through fascism once before, your perspective on that would be helpful. But let's go to B now. I think the idea that you've emphasized, which is business and is a sort of network of commitments, and that it requires trust. You have to be and mood. And you have to make promises and counter promises, and you have to believe that people are negotiating in good faith, and you have to have the ability to speak the truth and care about the truth. All of these things are fundamentally missing from AI. It lies, it doesn't keep commitments, it's not interested in, it's interested in monitoring and in data as opposed to treating business as commitments. So it's certainly not about care. And all those fundamental elements are missing from this very powerful new technology. So B, let me turn it over to you for some thoughts about this. Just synthesize what you see here, and what we're talking about is, from a philosophical perspective, very distressing.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I caught the tail end of the previous session. Very ambitious, very exciting, sounding like a new horizon for understanding what intelligence is, but in a compelling critique of the current paradigm, neural network paradigm, and the previous paradigm, claiming to have a whole new paradigm of what intelligence is. But the notion of care and commitment also didn't come up at all in Gabriel's presentation. I'm also looking at the abstract of the paper, very exciting sounding paper he mentioned, Designing Ecosystems of Intelligence from First Principles. There's still this strong element in our common sense that we can think about intelligence in human beings abstracted from commitment, abstracted from care. Like intelligence is just a matter of belief formation and inference and updating our beliefs. That's still the paradigm that I'm seeing here in at least in the abstract and in the tail end of the talk that I heard. So it just goes to show like how strong it is in our culture and in our common sense that when we think of intelligence, when we try to design, in the light of trying to design artificial systems that can be intelligent, we still don't grasp that commitment and care are at the core of what we are as human beings. And I think that's telling and interesting to notice.
Based on your background with Hubert Dreyfus, maybe you could just say a word about good old-fashioned AI, that kind of perspective, what he was onto with his critique, and what computers still can't do, that whole metaphor, and then roll that forward and say what AI still can't do, that perspective.
Yes, Bert's critique in what computers can't do is of symbolic AI or rule-based AI. It wasn't directed at the neural network paradigm, but the argument, and arguably it applies though, because the core argument is that you can't have intelligence in the way that human beings have intelligence anyway, unless you have a body that can acquire skills and a sensitivity for its situation, a skill-based sensitivity, and unless you care about things, which is connected to the fact that you die and you have a sense of the things that matter. Some things matter more than others fundamentally. And for human beings, that is connected to our finitude and our sense of our finitude and our capacity to love and to love in common. And the the understanding of language that we see in the large language models today still has clearly unlocked something very powerful. And I don't want to sit on a high horse and say that they've got that all wrong, because playing around with those tools, using them, there's clearly something very convincing that's going on there. But still, those models don't have a concern for truth. They don't have a concern for what matters to human beings. And that's that is the fact that they don't have that is not like a contingent little flaw that can be filled in later. It's a fundamental misshaping of what they're capable of doing. And language itself is not something for us anyway. It's not something that's disconnected from our relationship to the world. It's not a disembodied system of symbols. Our language emerged out of our need to coordinate and love together, and it's connected to the requirement we have uh, to provide evidence for what we believe, to explore together where we're coming from and our concern, and it's essentially connected to our social, engaged, skillful, embodied way of life. And this is not an optional add-on. And that's essentially a continuation of what Bert Dreyfus was arguing and what computers can't do also.
Here's,
Chauncey, do you want to
yeah, I
chime in
was
here?
gonna, let me add one tiny moment in the situation that Fernando was describing in the delivery of concrete in Mexico. One of the problems that they were complaining about when they came to us was that it had become habitual in the Spanish industry, in the Mexican industry, to order two loads of concrete from two different companies when you order concrete, because you could not depend on the company, on any companies to fulfill their promise. But they weren't talking about promise, they were talking about the concrete. And so the client was very pissed off that they were getting cancellations in the middle of the delivery. And when you have a cancellation of an order of concrete in the middle of delivery, you're in trouble, because if the stuff hardens in the middle of that big steel cylinder in the back of the machine, you then have to dump it somewhere, and they were dumping it on the roads. And we, as part of our conversation with them about the cost of what they were doing, we said that was something that they would probably like to get rid of, and they said, no, you don't understand, silly gringos, you don't understand, we know what to do here. And they had one of the technological marvels of the day then. They had their own satellites. This company had its own satellites traversing the planet. And they said, we know from our IT systems which customers ordered and canceled. And the next time they order, we'll tell them they need to come down to the office and give us cash on the barrelhead. And that will solve the problem. It's an example of the kind of unexpected contingencies that the previous speaker was talking about, that he's anticipating is going to be handled by a new kind of intelligence. And it was being handled by a new kind of intelligence in Mexico in the construction industry when we encountered them, but it didn't work. So
I remember the time of maybe apocryphal story about Fernando going to Aeromexico, and Aeromexico was notoriously late 98% of the time.
right,
And he stood up in front of the senior management and he said, "You're all bullshitting. Stop bullshitting each other."
yes,
And the idea of getting people to actually have permission to speak to the truth to each other and to care about the truth and to actually give accurate assessments and to stop bullshitting is a basic thing at many companies. And I detect in this conference over the last 3 days, we've had an enormous amount of bullshit. There has been all kinds of unempirical, ungrounded claims about the glories of this new technology. Session after session, there are people who are obviously advocates for their particular startups who are coming forward, and it's a natural thing for them to do. It's a forum for, some very innovative new tech companies to come in and talk about the glories of AI in a lot of different fields. Maybe it's true, but right, we've had a few years only to look at the actual reality of the new generation of AI and what it can do. So it's very early days and there's a lot of hype.
At the same time, Jim, one of the tendencies then can be that we talk and talk and talk and talk and don't test and don't get into action. Fernando said earlier that time and action are two of the things that Stafford Beer brought to his attention in a new way. And so I think it's very important that testing not be delayed. I don't think that long meetings of large numbers of people discussing what might happen in action is the solution here. It's more in the direction of what you were saying, what controls and what tests need to be done, and what communities need to be brought in to observe what's going on as the action is taken. We don't know what's going to happen here.
Fernando, let's come back to you. What do we do about this now? We talk about mobilizing. Is there any mobilizing to be done by the critics of AI or those who are more skeptical? Are we just in a reactive mode, sort of playing catch up? Or do we need to come together and actually have
Two big questions really to one guy can say something. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing for me, okay? Number one, I am trying to understand technically what the new model are and the technology that is behind and who are the different voices. And I believe it's worth to spend time with respect to listening them. And secondly, we are using, with one of my sons, using the machines like a way to produce interpretation of our interpretation. And we discover sometimes they are very usable. And like B and me have a lot of papers in the last 5 years together have never published because we have been doing a course together. But we sometimes, it's not giving us information, it's triggering new reflection for us that we are not before. And that's interesting. Huh? And I believe that Gemini, I believe is the name of the Google model. They found you very useful thing. Number one, then you need to get also, we are ignorant in some of the detail of the industry that this time. But I believe that there are a lot of nonsense going there. But the other phenomenon I believe is that we need to deal with the phenomenon in the opposite direction. What are the phenomena that good politicians or good CEOs happen that are, or what are the big mistakes that have been committed? Let me give an example of the big mistake. The philosophy of the General Motors. What was the name of this guy?
Jack Welch.
Jack Welch.
General Electric. Yeah. My former employee, I used to work directly for Jack Welch. For a year, he fired me.
Yes, I can expect, knowing you, that soup will produce that. Well, Jack Welch, in some moment, was invented as the genius of management, a chemical engineer that have character, for sure.
Neutron Jack.
They can say bullshit to other people. Then you only accuse the bullshit of other people. You never see your own bullshit. And bullshit is not the same like that lying. A good philosophy about that I can recommend to you.
Right. Harry Frankfurt.
Yeah. The bullshit is speaking without care and claiming that the speaking has value. And it could be a small bullshit, it could be big bullshit. Now we are living the big political bullshit, like the essence of the main politics in England, here, and other places. And the other alternative is promise an infinite future. That it could be more Chinese a story like that. Then it's then the other phenomenon we are doing is I want to produce a book, maybe the last thing that we can do, about what if the nation of care that is care is listened many times like some kind of religious thing or something of goodwill. No, care could be also uncare, also could be criminal care, organized. It belongs to the essence of human being of coping with the story. Then there is a good amount of work in biology. And Terry, we know that is going to be included in this team. We hope that we have enough years of life that I live for myself. It knows here the younger guy be that he had a chance. And then it's there. But at the same time, I believe it's an area, this is very important to say, in which some of this can work very well. And we should not throw away that, okay? But I don't want to spend my time in criticizing the whole thing too much, because if I do also try to understand the thing better, will be there. And the other phenomenon of is the invention of the world. That one of the more important things of language is a certain kind of social imagination. The social imagination that was started with religion. Look how important that religion. The conflict in the Midwest has to do a lot with all the stories that were never truth, but the truth was living like truth for many people. That's enough. Then and I believe that inside that, for me, I'm interested in the education of adults and in the education of children in a way that certain transformation happen. But for example, the people are discussing a lot how the brain works. And I said, why we don't think how thinking works? That is not the same. Thinking can be observed by what happened before the moment of thinking and after the moment of thinking, and examine critically. That's what philosophy do well when there. It's controversial in not science. It could be antagonism there. But after a while, something gets there. And my opinion, having been part of your journalistic story, you should be also learning from this, Jim, because you are very interested in corruption of all kinds. But some part of the corruption is necessary, because the people that are not corrupted also had an anchor vaccine. Look what's happening in places in which dictators live. Then it's the notion of commitment is not the same as care. But it's another. We need to have another component for that, Jim. Not today.
B, do you want to comment?
No, I think I have said my piece for the day. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. Let's turn it over to questions. Thomas, you're muted.
So
You're muted. Yeah.
I'm unmuted now. So I think one thing that we can usefully do is to sort of think in a structured way about the kinds of tasks and achievements that human beings are capable of, and that AI or any other artificial intelligence sort of thing, like we heard from the last presentation, what they might be capable of. And then instead of speculating what machines can do or cannot do, we can have a sort of pre-designed metric by which we can measure progress and see how far they actually get, right? And with regard to that, I think that you could start with things like achievements in terms of playing chess, for example, or organizing a traffic system and so on and so forth. The truth thing that you brought up is an interesting thing. So can we train these machines to not necessarily care about truth? I'll get to that in a moment, but can we train them to be more truth compliant, to sort of be better at saying things that are true so many % of the time? Right? We can program them, we can give them an algorithm and say it's this important that what you say is true. It's this important that you avoid error, but it's also important that you have something to say. So the best way to avoid saying something false is never to say anything. So we could give them some sort of an algorithm, and we can see whether it is trainable. Now, this is sort of the general thing about tasks. Now, one subset of tasks have to do with caring, in the sense that you interact with human beings and you give human beings the feeling that you care. So we had the example during the conference of a hotline for obese people. I think it was sort of a diet hotline, where bots or machines were competing with human beings in talking with people who had a eating problem. And here we can measure how well machines are doing in competition with human beings. Some very good human beings really can reform people, can put them on a whole different path, can get them to comply with a diet regimen and so on. And maybe machines can do it as well, can prevent people from committing suicide, get people to stop binge eating, or maybe they can't. And then there is a third thing, which is caring on the inside. And that I find the hardest to say anything intelligent about, namely, can machines care, or in Tom Nagel's phrase, is there something that it is like to be that machine? Does that machine have a kind of internal perspective? And I don't know how one could answer that question simply by observing the machine in operation and seeing what that machine can do, what tasks it can perform, what achievements it is capable of, and so on. So maybe that is something where, in the end, if the machine does all the kinds of things that humans do, then in a kind of Turing test spirit, we would say, well, this machine does have an inner life and this machine can care. But maybe we would also quite dogmatically say no to that, simply because we can't imagine machines being capable of having the kind of inner life that we have.
It's like the story of the eunuch in the harem. The eunuch in the harem sees everything, observes everything closely, has access to all the information, but somehow it does not quite grasp the essence.
What it's like, yeah.
So But Fernando, do you want to respond to that? What should we be doing? What can we expect from machines in terms of caring and truth?
It's very difficult to say nothing okay, but I can tell the experience that we are having. I found very interesting, for example, something that we are doing that via me principally, but sometimes other people have collaborated in this for 4 or 5 years in writing a book that has not been produced, that has to do with what we are talking here. But before we start the story before the explosion of the linguistic model of today. Then probably we never discussed that except recently. But we have found something very interesting, that we give a collection of paper and 2 AI people talk from a machine from Gemini, from Google. And one is a man and a woman, and they comment our paper. And you say it's very useful for me to listen to them. Not because they have the truth, because they trigger me all conversations. And if we take our nervous system like a machine, that it is for certain purpose is a machine, it's elicited by things. Then this connected eliciting that the machine do could be very useful. You don't need to believe them. But you need to say, oh yeah, I said that. Or because they say that, I call me by phone and say, did you see that yourself? Then I believe a conference like this, for example, could be in the future not only a collection of paper, a collection of useful conversation you can locate. Then language is not only information, it's like anything biological, it's a trigger in the present of what the past already have, orienting you to the future. That's temporality. That's what I said. We need to get out of the obsession for knowledge and power. And I believe that is a distraction, because it is obsession is what produces the lack of care. And that's why I found fascinating that a guy Trump existed, because you can see that phenomenon now embodied in real time. Now, why this guy is attracting people from the other from the industry like Elon Musk, that in my opinion is also a guy interesting to observe, but at the same time very limited in the kind of being that he is. If you look like a parent, it's a disaster. But like a guy that struggled with himself to bring the Tesla machine to life, the way that is described by the book about him, by Isaacson about him, it's very interesting to observe that. And you realize that there is a guy beginning to be human, because need to relinquish his own nonsense and being feeling with an emotion that the enemy are making short the stock of Tesla that before they come with the time. Then it's playing with a machine, playing with a great Borges library, and that could be very useful. But you select. That's a human action. You select certain dimension of interaction you want to have and the one that you don't want to have. That idea that we begin to be there is true. All the big promise that I see are skeptical, but reading your note, Jim, I found I know what is your passion in life. We need to also the relation of language and interpretation with evil, because evil is something very serious to call. Organized crime is evil. Political organized corruption is evil. And then I believe this part of the intelligence is going to be used for evil, but we need to discover how to protect from evil. That's all part of what they don't appear in the conversation, because the conversation is obsessed with knowledge. That, in my opinion, is the more stupid thing that you can do. And we need to leave. This belongs to the Cartesian universe.
Any other parting thoughts? Diana, I think I wanted to thank all the panelists here for a great session and a very interesting one. I'd also like to entertain a commitment to have some recurring conversations like this. I don't know if we can keep pace with the AI industry, but maybe this should not be a one-off session among the group here. Thomas, do you have any thoughts about that? Can we have a reconvene this in 6 months or?
Well, we have the opportunity of the course that we will be teaching in the fall.
Yeah.
So that might be a good opportunity to reconvene that, because it would certainly connect to the course themes.
Yeah.
But we could also make it as a freestanding event, of course.
But we'll discuss that.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. This has been really interesting, and I think the the panel from the last hour was the cherry on top. The strong criticism, critical thinking, and skepticism, and also new questions and and new conversations that need to be continued. So yeah, I think it's been really interesting. I really like the fact that we had speakers from different areas, including the tech private companies, because I think that's missing quite a lot. Putting philosophers in the same room with tech entrepreneurs and discussing some ideas is kind of exploring each other's minds and pursuits. So yeah, I think it's an interesting journey, and we should definitely continue these conversations. Thank you so much for participating.